And welcome, folks. How you doing tonight? This is the Pigskin Preview. We are doing a pre-recorded version, so it is Monday night. We're watching the Ravens game, which is fitting because of the fact that we're doing the AFC North tonight. Mr. Mancini has to work with the Angels this week, so we are recording the night before, and we hope to see everyone here next Tuesday as well. You can find this show as well as a group of other shows that we're going to be doing throughout the season at our Knucklehead Podcast Network. If you go to Spreaker.com/Nuckpods, KNUCKPODS, you can find all of our different shows, including this one here, the Pigskin Preview, as well as our show on YouTube. You can also find us at Nuckpods on both Facebook and on Twitter. So we're going to start off with a little bit of news and notes from around the NFL. And something that's kind of close to all of our hearts is that we see that Josh Gordon is back in camp, so we want to send him the best. Looks like he's coming in. He wants to focus more on just sobriety and on his mental health and getting things right. So I hope that time that he took is healthy for him, and I hope it all works out for him. We're rooting for him because the NFL is a much more exciting, entertaining league with him in it, with a talent like him in it. And just, as a man, I hope he gets his stuff together. Also news, the Washington Redskins, who've had some horrible injuries, especially in the running back room. Biggest of which is Geis, who's going to be out for the entire season this year. Just signed Adrian Peterson. So he's going to try and make it back. And I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. We can maybe touch on that a little bit later as the year goes on, but I can't really see him doing much, especially in that offense. But who knows? If anyone can do it, it'd be that robot of a man, even though he didn't really do much last year. But I think the story of the preseason so far, and something that we should all kind of look into, and we're gonna start off with a couple of the major rule changes, is how much these rule changes are affecting the NFL. They've made some of these first early games kind of hard to watch. But we'll start off with what's kind of being called the Aaron Rodgers rule. So I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Hirsch. I'm going to welcome him in. We haven't heard from him in a couple of weeks, so we're glad to have him back. And since it is called the Aaron Rodgers rule, we'll go straight to him, and then we'll have Blaine kind of talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls about that rule that we've already seen come up tonight. So, Mr. Hirsch, welcome. I hope you enjoyed your time off, and how you doing?
I'm doing good, Chris, and thank you for welcoming me in. And my trip to the North Woods was exactly what I needed, so I'm happy to be back, well rested and ready to go. The Aaron Rodgers rule. The rule is long and complex. What it basically says is that a defensive player cannot drive a quarterback to the ground and land on them with the full weight of their body. When asked what it really means, one of the referees was quoted as saying, it means you just can't plop down on them. So whatever that means as well. And there's a lot of things that arise out of this new rule. For instance, it only applies if the quarterback is trying to make a pass, but not if he is started to become a runner. Once the quarterback is a runner, the rule is off. As long as he's a passer, the rule is on. So I think there's going to be some confusion here, if not a lot of confusion. And it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out through the season. Blaine?
Well, I think it just complicates things more. I'm with you. I'll see how it plays out. I guess we all see how it plays out through the season. They're not going to listen to me. But I just think the rule wasn't necessary. This is football. Guys are going to get hurt. So you can't save everybody from getting hurt. I think you're asking defensive players to change their laws of physics with their momentum if they're coming in hard, or even if they're pushed in to the quarterback and they fall on the quarterback with their full weight. Is that a penalty? So it's getting to the point now with me is that you just may as well take the pads off. It's ridiculous.
Well, I could see your point, Blaine, and I'll be the first one to tell you that I was very disappointed to see Aaron Rodgers out for a lot of the season last season. But I still have mixed feelings about this rule. I think that everything that you're saying is correct. I think it makes sense. And, I hope it's not going to be applied too liberally. That's all I have to say about that. Chris?
And I think that's a big part of it too, Mark, is just how liberally are they going to apply the rule? How are they going to enforce this rule as far as the refs are concerned? Are they going to overdo it like we're seeing in preseason with all the rules now, new rules coming in, or are they going to let the guys play and see what shakes out? I can tell you one thing for sure is that Tom Brady has something else to complain about. Go ahead, Chris. I had to get that in.
Well, I mean, we were talking just a second ago, Blaine. We're watching this game here, and you have a situation where they have a quarterback in the grasp and he's trying to make a pass out, and they end up calling him in the grasp, but the players don't want to take him down because they're worried about this rule where they're going to pick him up and then drive him after they call him in the grasp. If you miss that by a second, then it's 15 yards. That's on a third down play. That's something where you have the guy that takes a sack and then gives them another set of downs. It keeps the drive alive, and that's a game changing play. And you're looking at some of these faster, more mobile quarterbacks. If you grab and then hold up, and it doesn't happen to be a sack, and you're holding up because you're worried about taking them down, some of these faster guys, like my boy Russ, he's out and gone. He can run, create some plays, throw a bomb down the field, run for 20 yards. I mean, it's a completely game-changing play. And when the rules come in and they're completely ruining the game, that's when I think there's a problem. And I don't understand what these defensive guys are supposed to do. And, speaking about that, you had 20-something calls this last week on this new helmet-to-helmet rule. Basically, if a guy's going to the ground, the offensive guy, if you put your head down and go head-to-head, they're calling 15 yards over and over again. I mean, it seems to me, that what you're seeing here is, I know some people talk about how they are overcalling it and the refs are trying to figure it out and the players are trying to figure it out. I'm glad to see that they're going to meet and talk about this. But I mean, Blaine, like, what do you do when you're a defensive player and you can't lower your head? I mean, how much is too much?
Yeah, and the thing that's short that I'm confused on, Chris, is I see it's supposed to apply both ways, but I see it being called on defensive players, over and over again when I see an offensive player lowers his head, and it's not being called. So I mean, I'm glad they're going to talk about it. What they need to do is go over and review these calls, each week, and then make adjustments. And if they want this rule to work, make adjustments to make it fair for both sides. Because right now the defense is getting hosed.
Well, there's more than one dimension to this situation. The NFL has been under extreme pressure about concussions and injuries to the head throughout a player's career. There have been players that have ended up in a condition which I guess you could compare to a punchy fighter at the end of their careers. They're just not what they used to be. And there's been a lot of criticism leveled at the NFL that they need to do something about it. I think they are trying to do something about it. And maybe there's some fine tuning required. But, that's another dimension to this is that, all right, you're going to criticize us for not caring about the long-term brain health of our players, and then you're going to criticize us if we try to change the rules to make that less likely. I don't know.
That's a valid point. I'm sorry, Chris, but that's a valid point, Mark, and I'm all for trying to keep the players safe and keep the game safe. But my point is keeping it fair as well. And ironically, they say that the defensive players going in the way that they go into tackle are actually putting themselves more in danger than the offensive player they're tackling. But my point is this: let's like you said, it needs to be tweaked, and it needs to be balanced so that it's fair for both sides. I think mainly, it's not that it needs to be tweaked so much as the refs need to call it evenly.
Well, that's true, Blaine. I think that a lot of rules, there's an area of discretion for the refs to use it. And as in terms of the Aaron Rodgers rule, if they try to enforce a penalty anytime there's any little instance of it, it's going to be a big pain for everybody, and it's going to have an effect on the game. Maybe the refs will be smart enough to just call it in instances where somebody really drives a quarterback down to the ground, and that it's clear that that's what's happening. And I think in the background of all this, not only do you need rules, but you need to have some dialogue about why the rules are there, what their intention is, and that the refs should use their discretion to apply the rules the way that they're intended to for the intended outcomes on that.
Yeah.
Good point.
I think it is definitely something that can be done as far as it does need to be a change, and they need to take the health of the players into account. So I think that is a good point, Mr. Hirsch. Well, I remember a few years ago when they started doing the helmet to helmet over the middle and defensive player. Everyone complained that it was going to ruin the game and that they weren't going to be able to play football anymore. And I think they found a way to really tackle like the rugby style with the shoulders. And talking about the defensive players being the ones that are at risk, there was an example of a player in the Texans game where he did that. And he got knocked out cold on the defensive side, putting his head down into the other. He got the penalty and he got knocked out cold. I think that was like the perfect example of the NFL can show of what they wanted and what they're looking to do. They are also putting together some type of a instructional video. That's what I'm looking for. Instructional video on how to tackle and how to make these things happen. And that way there's going to be a little more clarity, so we can see exactly if that makes sense.
Well, and a point is that if the rule is protecting the health of the defensive player as well as it might protect the health of the offensive player, then I think it's achieving its purpose. And maybe it could be like a holding penalty or something where they could apply the penalty against the team that committed the infraction. And I think Blaine's point about the offensive players aren't being called for it as much is a valid one.
Okay, so talking about the AFC North, and I want to get a quick. We'll go to Mr. Hirsch and then to Blaine. We'll start this way, and just a quick. I love every year when we get to this point. I want to hear Mr. Hirsch's take on Andy Dalton. Blaine, let me think what you guys feel about the offense. Then I'll get down into all the nitty gritty of the new players and things. But what do you see? I know last year you said Andy Dalton's never really done anything to impress you, Mr. Hirsch. What do you see after another full year of seeing Andy Dalton on the field? Has he done anything new to change your mind?
Not really, Chris. I'm not a fan of Andy Dalton, and I think that the Bengals made a big mistake when they traded off A.J. McCarron and in favor of Andy Dalton, despite the fact that McCarron is now injured in the preseason. But yeah, I think that I'm starting to think that the team that's going to be at the bottom of the division is going to be the Bengals this year. And a lot of that has to do with the whole setup, but some of it falls on the shoulders of Andy Dalton. I don't think he's going to pull him up.
I will say this about Andy Dalton, Mark, is that he did go out a hero last season. His final pass of the season was not only a game winner for them, but it also derailed the Ravens' chances of going into the of going into the postseason.
Yeah, well, what did it get the Bengals?
I gave a little bit of retribution, a little bit of satisfaction.
Yeah, and you know what we missed? We don't have the. We used to have someone call in all the time that was a Bengals fan, and I think he just got tired of getting jumped on because he always talk about it. And if Mr. Mancini was on, he would tell everyone about how Marvin Lewis needs to be fired. He's the worst coach in the NFL. So too bad that he's not here. And
well, he got tired. He got tired of being his skull dragged every week because he was talking ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think there is something to with the coaching, and I think since they lost, defensive coordinator went up to the Minnesota Vikings, doing such a great job up there that it's really obvious just what a huge piece of the team he was. Now, at least this year, the Bengals didn't get rid of players like they did the last 2 years, where they got rid of all their receivers and they got rid of all of their defensive linemen, their best defensive linemen, except for Geno Atkins. They still have probably the dirtiest player in the league in Burfict, who's facing suspension and problems again. So they have some issues. The initial look at their season this year, the Bengals, Vegas has them winning 7 games, with odds going towards the under. They do have a pretty soft schedule. What I'm looking at is, you look at who they have to play. They start in Indy, then they get Baltimore, Carolina, Atlanta. That's kind of tough. But they do have Miami, Tampa Bay, Cleveland twice, Denver, Oakland. They do have some easier stuff in there. But I think that when you look at their schedule, they do have one of the tougher schedules kind of in the middle. They're 13th, according to RotoWorld. But I just don't think they have the firepower to stand up with teams like the Falcons, the Chiefs, and you can only play the Colts and Dolphins. And we're going to get to the Browns in a little bit, and I think that they might be a little bit better. What do you think about who's going to be better this year, the Browns or the Bengals, Mr. Hirsch?
I think that the Browns are the new Bengals, kind of like orange is the new black or whatever. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns had beat the Bengals twice during the season.
Was that a play on the Bengals colors, orange and black?
Take it any way you want to, but I think there was something inherent in my comment that I thought the Bengals were going to be at the bottom of the division.
Yeah.
What about you, Blaine? I mean, you have coming in. Andy Dalton's coming back. Tyler Eifert, who can never stay on the field, is always hurt. So you do have some backups there. AJ Green's still there. John Ross and Tyler Boyd. These are just guys. John Ross was a high draft pick last year, did absolutely nothing. Joe Mixon didn't do anything. They have another rookie in there. They looked pretty bad on the ones look pretty bad on all the preseason games so far. I mean, and they have one of the worst offensive lines in the league. So, I mean, do you think this team can even win 7 games?
The thing about the Bengals is that they're one of those teams to me with a big question mark. I don't know how to gauge them. You just went through all that talent on that roster. Well, not even all the talent on that roster, but some major talent on that roster. And to see them have the last couple of seasons that they've had where they just couldn't get it done, and last season just couldn't get out of their own way, I'm not going to say it's mind-boggling, because I think a lot of it has to do with discipline, and this is one of the most undisciplined teams, in my opinion, in the NFL. And I think that's basically what the biggest problem is. I mean, you got AJ Green, you got John Ross, you got Vontaze Burfict, who as you said, is not my favorite player either, as dirty as he is. You have Mixon and Eifert can't stay healthy, like you said. I think it comes down to the discipline of this team. And I love I love the coach, but Marvin Lewis, but I think that he's been there for how long now? And when he first came in, he had great success. Maybe they're
No
just not
playoff
listening
wins,
to him.
though.
What's that?
Can't win in the playoffs.
No, they
Can't win in
can't
the playoffs. It's
can't win in
a
the
long
playoffs.
time to, yeah.
Good point. But it looks like
Can't win in
they're
the
slipping
playoffs.
rather than gaining, right? With what's going on in that locker room, that organization. So my to answer your question, I'm going to go with Mark Hurd. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to go with. I guess I'm going to go with me. I don't know. It's going to be. I see them battling for last place because I also think the Browns have improved.
Well, you got to know that what the problems that you're alluding to come down to the coaching situation, and I think that's why Mr. Mancini is always harping about Marvin Lewis has to go, is because somehow he's losing the ability to lead the team as a coach. And then you got Andy Dalton, who doesn't seem to be able to lead him as a quarterback. So where are they going?
Yeah, basically, if it's a zero-sum game and they're only reaching a certain level, see what they're doing or what they've done to get better or to shake things up. I've just seen this team or a stronger version of this team fall short too many times in a row to think that they're going to do anything at all. And I think that's what it basically comes down to for me, is the fact that I can't see how they're going to do anything, that's going to impress when this is the same team, if not, in my opinion, worse. Uh, how could it a better product? With that said, we talked about the Browns. I think that is an example of a team that is much better, obviously, by addition and subtraction. Getting rid of some of the worthless pieces and coming on with some better pieces. They're definitely one of the more entertaining teams so far this offseason because of the fact they're on Hard Knocks. You saw Corey Coleman get chewed out and then get put with the twos and go to the coaching staff and ask to be traded. Now the Browns, I still think, have one of the worst coaching staffs in the league, and the fact that they traded Corey Coleman for a 7th-round pick. He was a first-round pick last year. They traded him for a 7th-round pick, not in next year, in 2020's draft. Basically, just gave him away to the Bills. And while I think they have a lot of players that have come in that are doing really well and that look like they're going to build a base for a future, I still think they have a lot of losing ways within the coaching staff and the front office. How about you, Mr. Hirsch?
Well, I don't understand that because I think they brought in one of the best minds in football management in Evan Wolf. So how they can, make the mistakes that they do in acquisition or letting players go, it doesn't make sense to me. But I think that the Browns are on the rise. I mean, and just to go back to the last segment on the Bengals, I will say that I do not think they're going to win 7 games. And I think that the Browns are going to be a surprise for everybody if they could just get out of their own way and get out there and get an attitude of that they want to show people what they can do. Because after last season, they got nothing to lose. There's nowhere to go but up for them. And somebody in that coaching staff has got to inspire them to make a statement about who they really are. And in part of that equation is they have to first become somebody and then show people who they are. And I think that they have the talent, and I think, it's just a question of putting the pieces together.
Well, the front office says, okay, I'll echo what you said about the front office. The front office, yeah, I thought that they had made a good acquisition, and they were going to change their ways, but then they come with as stated, that trade that makes no sense. The front office still makes bonehead and ridiculous moves that just seems to make no sense. And has Dez Bryant signed with him yet? No? Don't do it. Don't do it, Browns. Don't do it.
I was thinking Des Bryant could go over to the Redskins as a running back.
Now, Dez went and visited the Browns, but he left the meetings without a deal.
Yeah, don't do it, Browns, because I mean they've got enough talent there to make an impact. They just have to bring it together. They already got Landry. They added Landry. They have Gordon. Josh Gordon's come back, as we mentioned earlier. You have what else am I thinking about on that team?
You have Landry. You have Mr. Genius who shipped his car up with gun parts and weed in the car.
Never mind. Not that one.
He looks great. You have David Njoku, who the first preseason game. I mean, he's an athletic freak and he's a monster. You have Nick Chubb and Carlos Hyde, who both look good in the preseason. Nick Chubb's a little disappointing because he's not really doing as well against some of the second, third string defenses. But Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson look amazing. Coming out of the backfield, catching balls, running hard. The offensive line looks pretty good. And you know who's really impressing me this year, who I think is going to take a complete step up, not just in talent, but you watch the Hard Knocks and you see the maturity and the professionalism that he showed, is I think that Tyrod Taylor, even though Baker Mayfield looks great, I think Tyrod Taylor is going to have a breakout year and it's going to make things really tough on them for next year. Because I don't think Baker Mayfield is going to get on the field, barring any type of injury. I think Tyrod is going to actually have a fantastic year. Vegas, and all these numbers came out in June, so they'll redo them as it gets a little closer. But they have him winning the least amount of games in the league, but they have him going up from 2 last year to 5.5 this year. And I think I'm kind of on Hirsch's side that they might win more than that. What do you think, Mr. Hirsch?
Well, I've said previously during the preseason that I think that the Browns are on the rise. I still think that. I agree with Blaine that they shouldn't, bring a prima donna into the mix and Des Bryant, and that they have plenty of talent. And I think that Baker Mayfield may get some playing time. It depends on what Tyrod does. If he's got them on a roll, they're going to go with him. But if things aren't going as well as they might, I think that Baker Mayfield will see the field. But I think that it's certainly possible that the Browns could win 6 or 7 games.
I feel that the drama has been set in Hard Knocks. What's going on with the coaching staff, though? So we got Hugh Jackson and was the coordinators or the offensive coordinator at least. Seem to be on opposite pages.
No, I mean they're giving what's his name from the Steelers for all these years and the Cardinals before that. Name escaping me right now. But he's in charge of the offense. He's staying away from that. But doing things like punishing the kid with the weed deal by playing him the entire preseason game. Making people sit out in the jug machines like they're in high school, as opposed to, working with the quarterback. I mean, there's a whole long list. I won't get into too much of it, and then you have Greg Williams, who's, suspended for trying to hurt players. That's your defense. It's the same old school mentality. These old school guys, these old school people that have failed at other places, trying to come in and do the same thing. It just makes no sense to me.
Well, I think that the of course, it doesn't need to be said that if the coaching staff is dysfunctional, then you don't expect a functional football team. So if they can iron whatever that, I mean, maybe it was a little over embellished or what have you, but it just sounded like it was it sounded kind of weird to me that they were some friction between. Was it Todd Haley?
Yeah, Todd Haley.
And Hugh Jackson. So, another team to watch. I mean, Browns are always the team to watch. They haven't won a game in 2 years. So let's get past that first, Looking at the schedule, they have. Let's see. I'm gonna make a prediction here, Chris.
Okay.
First Browns win comes at home, week 3 against the Jets.
Yeah, that'll break their winless streak. That's for sure. Yeah, I mean, those are the kind of people that they have to play. They have a pretty easy schedule. You also they get to play, every team in this division gets to play the NFC South, which is tough for a few teams, but some of those teams are a little bit Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, like the Carolina can be. I think the Bucks are still going to have some problems, so those are winnable games. The Saints are tough. Atlanta's tough, but we got to see what they look like. So it is tough that they have to play the NFC South, and they also have to play the AFC West. So it'll be interesting to see. But you also get the Bengals twice, as we talked about. You get the Jets, you get the Bucks, you get some of these teams. I don't think you're going to see a laughing stock team this year. I think that's for sure. And I really like what I've seen out of Baker Mayfield, but I'm unbelievably impressed with the maturity, professionalism, and what I've seen on the field so far from Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, we're just hoping that that they don't do to Tyrod Taylor what Buffalo did to Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah.
Bench him while he's having a great year. Bench him for no reason, and then anyway, let things go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let it go.
If there's a team that's more dysfunctional than the Browns, it might be the Bills. I think those two are about there, but at least the Browns have a lot more talent. Speaking of talent, a team with a ton of talent, but has had some serious problems in the offseason, and their franchise player still not with the team. We're going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I know that you've been a big critic of them, Mr. Hirsch. What have you seen so far in this offseason because everyone has them going to the Super Bowl or at least going to deep into the playoffs. What have you seen, with all the problems with Ben and Le'Veon? Do you think the team has the chemistry to make it? Because obviously they have the talent, but do they have the chemistry and the mindset?
Well, I'm at a disadvantage. I just came back from 2 weeks in the woods with not even any internet connectivity. So I'm kind of behind everybody else on what's going on. But I am just, I'm waiting to see what is going to happen with Ben Roethlisberger, because I know what happens to these guys that just won't quit. They keep soldiering on, and then suddenly they just fall off the cliff. And the question I have, is that going to be this year or not? And I think that has a lot to do with how the Steelers are going to do. I think their morale is, I don't know. Do you think the rest of the team is used to Le'Veon Bell and his antics with not signing and all the rest of this? Is this a disruption or isn't it? Because if it's a disruption and people are talking about them going to the Super Bowl, I think a big disruption is going to put a crimp in that, and they don't need it, but they got it. So, but on the other hand, I think it's reasonable to expect the Steelers to come out on top of the division, and I'm going to call it now: Steelers, Ravens, Browns, Bengals.
Woo! Well, I think if any early indications of things, and I'm not saying that this is going to happen. I'm not wishing this on them, but you're looking at the early signs in camp and in the off season, and they've had a lot of injuries. Roethlisberger just cleared concussion protocol. That was a weird incident where he runs into his tackle or guard and goes down and hits his head hits his helmet on the ground and has to leave practice and goes into concussion protocol. Vance McDonald has an injury. You had Antonio Brown has been out. I'm not sure if he's back at practice yet. The tight end McGee suffered a torn Achilles. So early signs, if you're going to say, that who is the team that's hexed with injuries, you can look at right now the Steelers as being one of the leaders as far as the offseason is concerned. How that affects him during the season is the question. It's a talented team. They got one of the better wide receiving core in football. Juju Smith-Schuster, Antonio Brown, of course. They traded away Martavius Bryant, though. So that was
They
one
traded away
thing.
Martavius Bryant, yeah, and so far this preseason, I mean, James Washington looks like an absolute stud. Juju is going to be a number 2 that should be a number 1 on most other teams. You have the best wide receiver in the NFL. You have arguably the best running back when he comes in. The beginning of their schedule isn't too bad. They get Cleveland twice and the Browns twice. They start off with Cleveland. In Cleveland, they get Kansas City comes to Heinz Field, Tampa Bay, Baltimore comes to Heinz Field, Atlanta comes to Heinz Field, then they play Cincinnati. You have a Week 7 bye, so they could come out of that little gauntlet with a winning record. They have the tougher teams in those first 7 games coming to their home field, and that could get them time to get Le'Veon together. And maybe all the stuff with Ben complaining about them drafting a quarterback and all the other nonsense, it all gets fixed once they start playing the games and once they start winning. They have some issues on defense. Offensive lineup is okay. Their tight end room is getting torn up by injuries, but on the field, that offense could score, I mean, a ton of points this year. And, except for Jacksonville, Baltimore, they don't really play that tough of defenses. So I could see them running up the score on a lot of these guys. And they only play one team that was in the top 5 of win and losses last year. So it'll be interesting to see if they can, meet expectations. But if they can't do it with the amount of talent they have, I don't know what they're going to do. So
They have a tough week 15 and 16 though. They host New England and then go on the road to New Orleans.
Well, I think that we're going to find out what the Steelers are made of in that first game they have against Atlanta. Because if they intend to be a Super Bowl caliber team, they're going to have a chance to show it when they come up against a very talented team from the NFC South. And I think that's going to tell the story on the Steelers.
I think it comes down to whether or not Ben Roethlisberger stays healthy. Because if they have to rely on Landry or any of these backups that they have, they're not going to do it. But I'm going to go along with you, Mr. Hirsch. It's the Steelers division until somebody takes it away from them. I put Steelers, Ravens, and I still don't know about the Browns and the Bengals. I can't choose between the two of those. Because I think the Bengals can always come. I still feel like the Bengals can have one of those seasons where they come back and out of nowhere, and all of a sudden they're forced to be reckoned with, or they could have a season like last season where they're forgotten.
Well, I agree that the Browns have problems, and the reason I'm picking them is because I guess I'm a fan of the underdog. But because actually I would be more with you, Blaine, of like, it's a toss-up, but I'm going Browns because I'm sending them a little love from here.
I'm leaning to them.
Besides the fact that I like the underdogs, anytime, except for that Rams season, just because everyone just hates Jeff Fisher, but anytime a team's on Hard Knocks, you start kind of rooting for the human element and some of the stories that you hear, because to see them so close up. It's something a lot of fans don't get to see. That is one thing I do like about Hard Knocks, is you get to meet like their families, their fathers, their girlfriends. You watch them try and make the team, and it's something interesting. So I think this year, besides the fact that everyone always wants the Browns to do good for the underdog reasons, and it's a historic franchise, even though it's technically not the original Browns. It is something that they're due. They need to come back, and those fans have stuck with that team for so long and been losers for so long. I wouldn't mind seeing them catch their due. So we're going to move on to a team that we know well here, and that you, of course, Baltimore. Blaine, no, it's the Baltimore Ravens. So why don't we start off by talking about the quarterback situation? The Ravens kind of raised some eyebrows around the league when they went in the first round and picked up a quarterback, Lamar Jackson, and a lot of people thought that it was going to be a push, as opposed to we're just talking about Ben Roethlisberger when they drafted a quarterback there. He pouted and went on social media and complained and caused all kinds of problems in division and made things uncomfortable and didn't want to help the kid. Flacco's been a pro about it. He wasn't happy about it. He felt like he's getting pushed, but he's one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league, and he didn't really have that stellar of a year last year. And they pushed him. Everything, all accounts are saying that this is his best camp of his career. So why don't you give us a little background? And do you think that he's just healthier this year and putting things together? Do you think that the push really did something, Blaine?
I'm in favor of the push. I think it's a little bit of the other things too. Is he's healthy again. Last year he had the back issue, a disc problem in his back. He missed most of the preseason. Actually missed all the preseason games, and he didn't start really. I think it was like a 3 weeks before the season opened that he actually started practicing, if I'm not mistaken. But he's healthier now. The knee is not an issue anymore. The back is not an issue anymore. The other nagging injuries don't seem to be bothering him that he had been dealing with. But I think the big thing here is he's been pushed. You know what they said about don't poke the bear, okay? Don't poke the sleeping bear. Well, Joe's been sleeping. And it's not Lamar Jackson that's the push. So that's the thing that people, in my opinion, get hung up on, and are, in my opinion, that's inaccurate. He got pushed by the team by them drafting another quarterback in the first round to be his successor. It's not the fact that this kid is expected to grow into something spectacular, but by the fact that he's still under contract for another 2 years, and now suddenly, if he wants to keep playing, he's going to have to play. If he wants to keep playing anywhere after his contract and get another contract, he's going to have to play. And I think it just sparked those competitive juices that need to be sparked sometimes with these guys. Who knows? Maybe Joe Flacco is going to be content with retiring after this contract. He's got 5 kids now. He's going into his 11th year. Maybe after this year or the next year, especially if he gets another ring, he'll just want to ride off into the sunset. But right now, I think it's a push. He's doing things that he hasn't done before in camp that fans have been and other personnel on the team have been trying to push him to do, as far as going off campus with his receivers after practices and throwing the ball to him. Joe has been fully invested into this camp, unlike any other since his first year.
For God's sake, I don't know what's the matter with these guys, because look how long Aaron Rodgers was sitting on the bench behind Brett Favre. Think about how many times I've criticized the Steelers for not taking a pick to be the next in line behind Roethlisberger. These guys should know that they're not going to play forever, and it only makes good sense to bring somebody in, and somebody that can learn from them, somebody that they can mentor. And when they don't have it anymore, that's when you move the new guy up. So I don't understand why these guys' feelings are hurt when you bring in a quarterback to be a number 2, because every team needs a number 2. And the smart way to do that is to get somebody that is going to have the potential to replace the number 1 when their time is over. So the push, I mean, why does any NFL player need a push? If they're sitting there coasting, there's something wrong with their attitude and their mental approach to the game. I don't understand that at all. I don't understand why somebody needs a push in order to perform the way that they can perform. So this whole conversation. I mean, I'm just, and obviously I'm not a Baltimore guy. I'm not a Ravens fan, so I don't have all these built-in Homer prejudices in favor of the Ravens and in favor of Joe Flacco. But I don't understand why any NFL player needs a push.
It's not. It's not about the team, or let me put it this way. I experienced this even on the lower level of sports that I played when I was playing center field in a recreational Sunday league, and I was a starting center fielder, and I was the fastest on the team. I could cover a lot of ground out there. I was making the catches. I couldn't throw the ball, but I was still. I mean, it was like that was my position. It's the competitive juices. When they brought in a younger guy, or when the younger guy came on the team the next year, that 1 year, and I felt I was in danger, it just ramps you up, and it's not a it's about wanting to hold on to, not wanting. I guess you can call it a bit of an insecurity at times. When you have something that that is yours, and somebody else is coming and threatening to take it, or they're threatening to take it away from you, and you're a competitive person, that fires you up. Now, if you look at the Ravens roster in previous years, in recent years, who's been there to fire him up behind him at quarterback? Ryan Mallett, Tyrod Taylor before he was, when he was developing. But nobody was looking at Tyrod Taylor. Nobody knew Tyrod Taylor.
Well,
So,
I think Flacco has been coasting, though, and that's what I don't understand. Why is a guy that's making that kind of money go out there and coast? Why? I don't get it.
I'm not going to say that this is the reason, because I don't know for sure. I'm not in Flacco's head, but you look at the combination of things. You got nobody behind you pushing you. You got the team, content with, or look to be content with what you're doing, and just acquiescing to what you're doing. You got your big payday. You got your MVP in the Super Bowl. You got your ring. So it's very easy to fall into that comfort zone and say, okay, I just have to do this, get us to the playoffs, and then boom. If you notice that, those 16 games of the regular season, it's like Flacco's coasting. You don't know which Flacco's going to be there a lot of times. You get to that postseason, all of a sudden a light turns on because it's more competitive. There's more to go for. And I'm speculating here. Like I said, I'm not in Flacco's head. I could be all the way over on Pluto right now with the theories that I'm throwing out here. But from what I observed of him, and being in that competitive nature when I was playing sports, or anything that I do, not anything, but anyway, it fires you up when you have something, when the pressure is on, and people start to doubt you. When they start to take it, or look like they're taking something away from you, or you feel like you're not getting the respect. And maybe it's an insecurity already complex or something. I don't know, but I think that is what is firing up Joe Flacco this year. He's like having his best camp. He's looked the best that he's looked since, in his career.
Well, we'll see how fired up he is as the season progresses.
Yes.
And just a little Ravens news for those of you who don't know. This just came out. It looks like Jimmy Smith has been battling a possible suspension. He's been appealing it. It looks like it is going to go through. It comes from Smith was involved in a custody battle with his ex-wife, and she went on court records, accused him of illegal drug use, domestic violence. Even though there's no criminal charges, he is being looked into. He's on probation for PED violation from last year. So it looks like he's going to get hit with a suspension again. So that's bad news. Talking about that side of the ball, Blaine, looking at the game tonight, they talked about the defense. You have kind of a new system going in. They're letting the veterans on the field kind of be coaches on the field and make a lot of changes. They look strong up the middle, at middle linebacker. You have Suggs out there, and then you have Eric Weddle at safety. Do you like that policy of letting those veterans run the defense? And do you think they're going to be tough? Because so far, I mean, they've held the couple of games they've played. Defenses look really good. They've looked disciplined. Do you think that the defense is going to be one of those classic Ravens defenses that you usually get?
I think what you have here is Wink Martindale. Don Wink Martindale is taking over as defensive coordinator for Dean Pease, and you're looking back. Martindale looks like more like a Rex Ryan type of coach, because Rex Ryan used to let these guys do, make adjustments on the field, let the leaders on the field, the veteran presence on the field, do, have a little leeway and do the leadership there and make adjustments there. And those guys had fun, and these guys are having fun now. Terrell Suggs was a part of both of those. And so you look at, the guys that you have out there with Terrell Suggs, with Jimmy Smith, who, as you said, might be suspended for multiple games. But, this isn't the first time. They have a very deep secondary right now, especially at cornerback, and very talented. This could be one of the best cornerback cores in the league, or secondaries in the league. You got a lot of guys out there. You got Eric Weddle out there, able to, he knows what he's doing. Terrell Suggs knows what he's doing. Brandon Williams knows what he's doing. Oh my gosh, C.J. Mosley definitely knows what he's doing. So why not let these guys have a little leeway? The thing that scares me is don't let it go too far, as Rex Ryan did, where you have Bart Scott picking up a penalty flag and throwing it in the stands, and all hell breaking loose. Okay, that's what probably cost Rex Ryan any chance of being a head coach with the Baltimore Ravens, by the way. But I'm all for these guys having fun playing defense, flying to the ball, letting the veterans out there make adjustments instead of waiting for somebody on the sidelines to tell you, okay, I didn't see that adjustment that the offense made, and so we couldn't counter adjust. No, let these guys adjust. Let them play football and do what they do. So yeah, I'm all for that, man.
Well,
Somebody's mic.
How old are these guys, Blaine? How old is Weddle and Suggs and the rest of these veterans? It seems like they've been around for a long time.
12 years.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't time take its toll? I mean, that secondary, that's a place where you got to have some wheels going.
Yeah, you got older guys. I mean, you got Jimmy Smith, who's the elder statesman as a cornerback, or no, Brandon Carr, I guess. But you also have Tavon Young, who's who missed all of last season, was shining in his rookie year, had a nice rookie year, went out with a knee last year, came back. He's back and healthy this year, making plays. You have Marlon Humphreys. And by the way, I'm going to say something, Chris, that's going to floor you. Are you sitting down, Chris?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you ready? I now like that pick. Over O.J. Howard. I am conceding Ozzie knows more about drafting than I do. As the listeners who have been with us know, is that it wasn't that I was against Marlon Humphrey. I was against not taking O.J. Howard when we needed tight end help. Well, that's been rectified this year on that side of the ball. We have tight ends now that look good. And Marlon Humphrey has come on and made some noise in this league. Do you know I believe he was like the least completed passes last season as a cornerback? Percentage of passes? I believe that was Pro Football Focus number.
Yeah, he was up there.
Yeah. So you got Marlon Humphreys in his third year. Tavon Young in his third year. Or was it Marlon Humphreys? No, Marlon Humphreys' second year. Anyway, you got young players in there. You have Jefferson's not he's the middle guy, I guess. He's not old. Um, and you got some other younger players that I don't want to go through all the list now, but they've got a young core of talent on at cornerback that are coming on, and this is the best cornerbacking core that we've seen, I think, for the Ravens since they've been there.
I'll tell you what I like about the Ravens is your off season. I think that you saw Brown today. You saw John Brown today. I think he's got his health stuff around. You got Michael Crabtree there that they picked up. I think they've got some Willie Snead out there. You have some good players that you guys have been able to pick up, and you also drafted strong. Talking about the Bengals and why I can't see a team that was so and really hasn't done anything to get better. I think that the Ravens, who were a strong team last year, you can see that they went out and filled some holes and really got better. Are you excited about some of the guys that they brought in?
Yeah, that whole wide receiving core is retooling the wide receiving core is an improvement if they can stay healthy, because there have been some health issues with John Brown and Willie Snead. Crabtree, even though he had his numbers were down a little bit last year, he was still big in the end zone. He was still, a big touchdown threat. You got the tight ends, Hayden Hurst, that was the first round pick ahead of Lamar Jackson, who he was a baseball player with the Pirates, and decided to, that he'd rather go and play football, and now he's coming on and looks very good. Mark Andrews, who was the tight end taken in the third round. I think the weapons here, along with Jordan Lashley and Jaleel Scott, they've got some. They've got some weapons now. Flacco has some weapons now, is what I'm getting at. You couple that with Buck Allen coming out of the backfield catching passes, the running game with Alex Collins, and Kenneth Dixon when he's healthy. He looked pretty good tonight. Finally, he's been out most of the preseason, but he's back on the field now. I'm very excited about these additions.
All right, looks good. And looking at the schedule for the Ravens, obviously you get to play the Browns twice, the Bengals twice. You start off with Buffalo. You also have Denver in there, Tennessee. The first 9 games, you have New Orleans, Carolina, and Pittsburgh twice, so you can get them out of the way. And then you have a late bye, which I think is always strong for a team that wants to make the playoffs. So you have a bye in Week 10, and then it closes out a little bit tough. But you also have Cleveland in there, Tampa, Oakland, who I think is going to be a bit of a weaker team, and Cincinnati. I think that things line up pretty well for the Ravens. I still think that they're going to drop a couple of games that they should win. This is something that never happens on this show, but I'm going to agree with the guys. I think that Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Cleveland, and then Bengals bringing up the cellar is how it's going to look this year. So I think we're all in agreement there.
I want to point out one more weapon real quick, Chris, and that people aren't usually aware of until you see it in a game where he scores a touchdown. They've got a player that second-year player undrafted. I believe he was undrafted last year. His name is Patrick Ricard, who is a defensive lineman, but he is also their fullback. So he plays on both sides of the ball. This guy is big, and when he's moving, it looks like nobody wants to tackle him around that goal line. And so look for Joe to be hitting him for some short yardage touchdowns this year, as he did last year.
All right, sounds great, folks. this is our recorded show. You'll be hearing this normal time. Next week we will be around for same a little bit earlier on Tuesdays, our live show at 6 o'clock Pacific. And then later this week we'll be coming out with the NFC South show on NuckPods. That's Spreaker.com/NuckPods. Also at NuckPods on Twitter and Facebook. So we'll be winding up our divisional specials this week and next, and football's almost here, folks. So for Mr. Mark Hirsch and Baltimore Blaine, I want to say good night and thank you
Chris,
very much. Yes, sir.
what's our email?
Our email is knuckleheadpods@gmail.com. If you want us to answer a question during the week, we're more than welcome to send us an email at knuckleheadpods@gmail.com. All right, with that, folks, thank you so much for your time, and we are out, yeah.